I wonder if they just saw the US as like they're not selling that many cars already.
Welcome back to Car-Pinionated, our weekly show on cars, the car industry, and driving in general. I'm Doug Stewart, and this is Brian Moody, an automotive expert and analyst, and he's going to talk to us about some EVs that are coming and going. So, Brian, welcome back. The first thing I wanted to
Yeah.
talk to you about uh, happened. We're recording this Friday, the 27th, and yesterday the government said to Polestar, "Hey, thanks, but no thanks. Go back to Sweden or
Right.
China, wherever." Can you explain a little bit what happened there?
Well, so starting back in January of 2025, there was a rule passed, and a lot of this has to do with trade rules that the Biden administration had passed. But as we know, it's one thing to pass a rule, but then there's some time that takes place in between to like write it up. What does this really mean? Who does it apply to? There can always be legal objections, which we see happen sometimes with Trump. Trump will say something, and people are like, "Nope, we're suing you." And so there's all this time before something can actually kick in. In the case of Polestar, what it basically is a rule that says we, as Americans, or our government is saying, we don't want connected vehicles, so connected cars, cloud services, telematics. We don't want those cars to be sold in the US when they are of the origin or under the control or influence of a foreign government, specifically China and Russia. So in the case of Polestar, it is a connected vehicle, as most cars are, have some kind of connected features. You'd be hard pressed to find a car today that doesn't have some kind of cloud or connected services. And so Polestar is no longer going to sell cars in the US past 2027. They're going to sell down their stock and they're going to stay here with their dealers to continue to do service. I wonder if they just saw the US as like they're not selling that many cars already, because they could have appealed or they could have gotten an exception, but they didn't, and now that's it for Polestar. So Polestar will not be able to sell cars in their current state with the current arrangement. They won't be able to sell them in the US past 2027.
And I looked up the numbers, and last year they sold a little bit less than 6,000, which was way down from the year before, which was a little bit less than 8,000. So, and I
Hmm.
think one of the things they said in the press release was uh, US only accounts for 6% of their
Right.
output. Um, they were only selling two models here anyway. And I was surprised a couple of months ago that they were no longer selling the Polestar 2, the sedan, that they're
Mm.
only selling those used, pre-owned,
Right.
and then you have the three, which is kind of an SUV-ish sort of thing, and then the four, which you can see
Hmm.
up but you can't see back.
Yeah.
Okay,
The
whatever.
one with no back window, right?
Yeah. Why do you think the difference between Polestar, which is owned by Geely, and Volvo, also owned by Geely, why does Volvo get a pass and Polestar doesn't?
I think there's two big reasons for that. Number one, Volvo's customer base is pretty high in the US, right? Like a lot of Americans want Volvos, own Volvos, like Volvos, has a history of those cars being in this country for a long time. That's the first thing. So consumers want them. And then hand in hand with that, guess what? When consumers want something, guess what the maker of that thing wants? Well, then they also want to be there. People want to be where they're wanted. Little lesson for friends, kids. If you just want to figure out who your friends are and aren't, there's a little lesson for you right there. So they're where they wanted, and they want to be where they're wanted. And then they also have factories in the US, right? So one of the big advantages with a company like Volvo is that they can, by having a footprint in the US, in South Carolina specifically, you can ramp up or down the production of cars built here in the US. And then the last thing is, so those are the two big things. The last thing is Volvo asked for a review and to have it
Okay.
be accepted, and asked what are the rules that we can comply with so that we can continue to sell cars. So really, like most things in life, like, well, how did that guy get to be a quarterback? Well, because he had a desire greater than almost everybody else.
Right.
You know, the
Right.
rest of us are sitting around going, I guess it would be nice. No, that guy's up at 4 a.m. every day doing it. And I'm like, I'm watching the news going, yeah, I guess if someone asked me to be a quarterback, I will. But
Yeah. And it also occurs to me that this is one of those, might be one of those situations where um, Polestar doesn't have dealers, right? And they're doing a direct manufacturer direct sales, and
mm-hmm.
you have, I don't know, 6 or 7 Volvo dealers here in Connecticut, and
Right,
then replicate that nationwide, and so
right,
you're not just it's not just the Volvo company, it's those local folks, right? And it's
right.
got a
That's
much bigger
fair.
spillover effect.
I think that the big answer is Volvo wants to be here. Volvo profits from being here. And I would argue that American consumers profit from Volvo's being here as well. Like they're getting a high quality, safe, nice car. Like every consumer good has its pluses and minuses. I think that you could look at something like, like your typical soda pop and say, well, Americans probably want that. Questionable whether or not that's a benefit to them or not, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that, but they may want it. But in Volvo's case, with their safety record and the quality of their cars, I think consumers are getting something out of it too. Not the least of which is increased competition because you have more things to shop. And when you have more things to shop, that makes those things better because they have to be better than the next guy. And I think that their desire to be here is that, like, hey, let's figure out what the rules are and work their way around it. When you have a company that's 94% of your sales are outside this country, it's not completely unreasonable to say, well, I don't know, because you know as well as I do, you go around the country or around the world. Why don't we have Citroens here in the
Yeah.
U.S.?
Yeah.
Why don't we have MGs? Why don't we have the Toyota Aygo? Or why don't we have a Dacia Duster? I mean,
Mhm.
there's
Yes.
tons of cars. I would
Yeah.
love to have a Dacia Duster, by the way.
Yes.
Um,
You're not
I
the
think
only
they would
person who's
sell.
been on a Car-Pinionated who likes the
I
Dacia Duster.
I think they would sell well because it's small and affordable and the little SUV. But the point is that there's many cars across the world that we don't get here. And I think because the automaker has looked at the price, value, cost proposition and just
Mhm.
said, we don't need to be everywhere all the time. It's okay if we just sell Twingos in these cities. That's okay. There's not a big payday out of it.
Right.
It's like
Right.
these companies are all in the business. It just sounds so crass to say they're in the business to make money.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
when you
Yeah.
have when you have children, it's one of the funniest things. My kids would always say, "Dad, why did they stop making that TV show that we liked?" And then after the fifth time, you're like, "When do I tell them my cynical view that it's always gonna be the same reason, buddy?"
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they just didn't think they could make any more money off of it.
Right.
No,
Right.
that's not the real reason. It kind of
Yeah.
probably is.
Yeah. My common response to that question is, well, capitalism. And
Yeah,
it's true. Capitalism is great. It's a great system, but there's some pluses and minuses to it.
right.
Well, speaking of new things, um,
hmm
you had a chance to check out the Slate, the
Yeah,
the incredibly low priced EV pickup truck that is
right.
brought to us as a almost a do it yourself project.
Yeah, there's a heavy DIY. I always confuse those. There's a heavy DIY element to that car. Um, I think what's interesting is that once you remove the taxpayer funded EV incentives, those rebates that people got, I think a lot of people mistakenly assumed, well, that's just the EV segment's going to collapse. And that's not what's happening. What's happening is depending on which side you're on, you could argue with the Polestar thing and with Slate and others is that there's action, there's turmoil, right? There's something is happening, and something happening is often exciting. And so what Slate has done is said, hey, we see that there's a need for this small, simple, maybe less expensive than average car, and they have a small pickup truck that's 24,950 plus destination. So it's $25,000. That's an attractive price, but if you want features, you have to add those, and then it's going to cost more. But as an idea and as a functional thing, it's a good
Mhm.
idea.
And they seem to. I took a quick look through the accessories, and
Hmm.
like almost all of them, with the exception if you change the body style, like
Yeah,
nicer wheel, really nice wheels are $1,400. Wraps
yeah,
are anywhere from 50 to 500.
yeah.
Speakers 150 to 250. So you could figure out some way to put it together that it's not a terrible experience.
Sure.
Um,
Yes.
and a lot of that is they grade it on uh, you know easy to do, moderate, or advanced. And
Yeah.
apparently they're going to have a whole bunch of YouTube videos and service centers. I'm wondering how the whole 3,000 service center is going to play out, but okay, I'll wait. They may know more
Yeah.
than I do. Um,
But they have
but
said that there's going to be a handful that are dedicated Slate service centers, and that's for when you have a really serious maintenance issue or whatever, which would be related to the motor or the battery. So the rest of it, I could sort of see if they stay true to their simplification program, maybe the average shop should be able to fix almost anything.
yeah. And so you rode in it. What were your thoughts?
It feels like every electric car. It's quiet and it's quick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was expecting it to be a very choppy ride because it's a short wheelbase. It wasn't. It was actually, pleasant. And they even um, took the steps to drive us on intentionally rough or bumpy roads.
Mm-hmm.
Still felt well screwed together. The cabin is a little bit more roomy than you might think by just looking at pictures. So if you think about cars that we have all experienced, consumers and those of us that do it for a living, well, we've had no problem with Nissan Versas and Honda Fits and the old Ford Ranger
Mm-hmm.
and the Chevy S10 and on and on. It's bigger than those things. It's more
Mm-hmm.
roomy than those things. Two grown men could ride in it and not feel like you're rubbing shoulders. Like you ever been in a vintage Volkswagen
Yeah,
with, there's two dudes in a vintage Volkswagen and you're like, "Oh my gosh, stop."
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
well, it's not like that. It's there's space inside and it is what it appears to be. A small-ish, low budget, no frills electric pickup truck that can probably do a lot of delivery stuff. And I think fleet
yeah,
is probably the answer
yeah.
right here. All those accessories, I get it. That's nice to have. But again, if this is just me being old, I'm okay to take that criticism. But I don't know if people are looking to add that complexity to their lives. I think they're looking to remove complexity from their lives. And every time there's been some highly customizable thing like the Saturn Ion with its changeable roof rails or seat fabrics or even Tesla, don't people just Teslas is kind of like, yeah, you can customize them, but people just get the wheels they want, they get the color they want, and they move on with their day.
Mm-hmm.
No one's sitting around going, how can I add stripes to this? They just want to do what they want to do. But for a fleet, I think it can make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things I read is that they are doing outreach to fleets and sort of
Yeah.
getting want to get it set up so they can have like a couple vehicles so the fleets can try them. And I've said all along that the EV case for if the case for an EV at a fleet is really good because if you're sending these cars out, for 8 hours to do whatever, it's not
Right.
probably not going to go that far, and then it comes back and you
Yep.
plug it in and you're moving on with your day, and the next day it's charged up.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not a big, like, I'm not a huge, we have to have electric cars advocate.
mhm,
I don't feel like that's true. However, at the same time, do we need V8 powered Ford Crown Victoria Interceptors idling all day to do traffic, to do parking tickets? No, of
yeah,
course not.
yeah.
Do we need big diesel engines in the city to do that last mile of deliveries? No, of course not. So I think that if you think about this, how many times you go to a college campus, to any kind of municipal building, or anything with a large campus, right? How many times do you see that they still have those old Cushman carts or those old Daihatsu Hijet?
Hmm.
They still have those, because what's the replacement for that?
Hmm.
So imagine a large college campus, and you have 10 of those
Hmm.
pickups to do little work here and there, or landscaping at a public park, or a suburban city. There's so many good uses for it that are other than consumers buying it. I think that's the way that it should go, because they're not going to get, most likely they're not going to get zebra striped seat covers and a stereo. They're just
Yeah,
going to get
yeah,
basic truck, and then, you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah. Um, I want to take a break here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the Rivian R2, which just recently
Mm.
launched. So we'll be right back. We're back. We're talking EVs that are coming and going. So there's also the Rivian R2 launched and
Hmm.
is, I guess it's starting sales soon-ish already,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. Um, have
First
you,
deliveries, I think, just happened.
okay.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about it?
I like the way it looks. Um, I think that's the right move for them. I don't, there's nothing about it that I dislike. I think it's a right size, but I don't know if it's the right price.
Okay.
So it's relatively expensive. I think it's in the 50 to $60,000 range, which is less expensive than their top of the line one. I understand that. But it's here you see there's two different philosophies, right? Like, you see, well, we have to build the expensive ones first and get people to buy it, and then we can build the low price one so that we can fund that. That's one way. But then you have Slate, where they're like, no, we're just going to go like low price right out of the gate, and then probably, my guess is, make up the difference in volume for fleets, or there's probably profit built into all those accessories.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have these two competing, philosophies. I think that the starting low is probably the way to go. And but here's the thing about all of these cars that we're seeing. So little of it is about the actual quality of the vehicle. It's
Hmm.
not, there's nothing wrong with the Rivian vehicles or the Rivian R2. There's nothing wrong with those. But price wise, I think people are beginning to tire of expensive things.
Yeah.
And and I'll tell you, just from my own posting of a video on Slate, the Slate pickup, the SUV is $30,000 and the truck is $25,000. Even the comments there are like, "Who says that's cheap? Like, what are
Yeah.
you talking about, cheap?"
Right. Right.
So I think people are becoming desensitized or just irritated by that. Like, is everything just going to be so expensive? And then, so again, the Rivian as a vehicle, great, looks great on paper, looks good in person, attractive, has the features you would want, but is it the price that makes sense for most people?
Right. Right. What are your thoughts on the Ford um, vehicle, the pickup truck that's going to be the what they call the new Model T?
Yeah, their new platform that's
Hmm.
that's EV. again, it kind of shows that everything's pointing down. Everything is saying we need to start lower. And what I find interesting about all of this is, have you heard about the REO truck company?
I have. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's basically, for people who don't know, it's a resurrection of the truck company REO Speedwagon. And I know as soon as most
Not the
people
band.
hear that, no, they're thinking about how I'm going to keep on loving you. And
Yes.
it's not that. It's the band actually took their name
Right.
from the defunct truck of the time with the same logo and everything. REO standing for Ransom E. Oldsmobile. He was part of the Oldsmobile
I was
company.
going to
They booted
say.
him out.
Yeah.
And then REO Speedwagon, though, the truck company actually kind of started the modern, utility truck
Yeah.
world that we have. I think they may have even beat Model T to the punch with a pickup truck.
Okay.
And then Model T later was like, oh, what if we put a bed on the back? And then, so this truck, again, gasoline powered, low price. So they're saying 21.5 for a basic gasoline powered, body on frame, simple, easy to fix pickup truck. And here's why I think that could work. Because remember when the Maverick came out
Yeah.
and there was a line, there was a list. Um, we
Yeah.
say this a lot. We see cars a lot that come out and we say things like, it's the answer to a question nobody was asking. And yet, the Ford Maverick was an answer to the question everybody was asking,
Sure.
specifically, how can I get a cheaper, smaller pickup? Dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun. Here you go.
Yeah.
And so I think the REO makes sense because people are asking that. Same with the Ford electric truck. I think people are asking, how can I think people look at the idea of like a base, like a Silverado LT1,
Yeah.
and say, that's $55,000. Do I need a $55,000 truck? Like even if it was free, is the size of that going to work for me?
Yeah. They're so
So I think,
huge. They're
yeah, they're big.
so huge.
They're big. Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss the standard cab days. I think that's when people, and then so some of these trucks, the REO, for example, I think there's like a two door, a four door, and then something else. On the Slate, by the way, it's only a two-door truck
Right.
and it's
Right.
only a two-door SUV. So if you want to sit in the back, you have to climb in. It's not going to be good for picking up grandma to go to brunch. Grandma's not going to want to get in the back of the Slate. But this REO thing seems promising. The Ford truck seems promising because it's starting with a low price. I think people are becoming price sensitive and they
Yeah.
see that, you know, the REO example is like, well, they're saying, what if it wasn't electric?
Mhm.
Fair. That's an okay question to ask. What if it was? Because what if you took the Slate at 25 and said, let's put a Honda 1.6 liter engine in it? What would the price be then without the batteries and the electric motor? 20?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Proven technology. Put it in there. It's
Yeah.
going to get good, good
Yeah.
gas mileage. Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to have good gas mileage. You could even do hybrid if you wanted to.
Yeah. So it's 2.5 years from now, and you're faced with, you as a consumer uh, have a Slate, the Ford EV, or a Ford Maverick hybrid.
Am I limited to buying it new, or can I buy used if I want?
Used, whatever works.
I would probably buy a used Ford because I know they're going to be around.
Yeah.
And I think to our Polestar story earlier, listen, I hate to be the guy that's like, hey, get off my yard. But, one of the things I realized why those old people when we were kids, why they said to get off their yard? It turns out they spent a lot of time and money making their yard look nice.
Yeah.
It turns out. And so I
Yeah.
hate to be that guy, but if you look at Better Place, Lion Motors, Coda, Fisker, uh,
Yeah.
Aptera, there's a long line of EV startups that just didn't go anywhere. And I don't think the average person realizes what an anomaly Tesla is
Yeah.
because You don't have to like the guy to see that the company has done a good job. It's an American car company that is successful, that
all
outsells
over the world.
all over the world and outsells its competitors
Hmm.
tenfold. So you can like the guy or not like the guy, whatever. It's an anomaly.
Hmm.
That was a shot in the dark. Is it because he slept under his desk? And I don't know. I really don't know. But what they did do was like, hey, what if we made an electric car that was actually kind of cool looking?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Tesla is an anomaly. It's not easy.
No.
And Tesla is one of those things, and I don't even mean this to be mocking them, well, at least not too much, is that the more different they said they were, the more time went by, the more the same they were.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Because because you're not living in the computer world. This is in the real world where there's a factory and there's fire and there's air conditioning and there's people getting sick and there's vacation days. All that adds up to, I guess we got to charge $1,000 for destination.
Let me ask you another multiple choice question.
Sure.
Um, Lucid, Rivian, Slate.
Yeah.
Which are we going to see still around in 3 or 4 years?
I'm going to say Rivian.
Okay.
It's hard to pick that. I feel like Lucid is so small that it's not mature enough. You know, like as a plant, when you plant plants, they're like it's still fragile. No matter what people say, no matter what you want to believe, and no matter what euphemisms you use, when you start seeing buyouts, layoffs,
Mhm.
staff reduction, reduction in force, whatever word you want to use, they're in trouble. They're having a hard time. They either don't have a vision for the future or they see the future clearly and they know it doesn't include them.
Yeah. There's a bunch of people on the top that have left Lucid within the past
Right.
couple months, and that
Right.
that doesn't bode well. I don't care how much money you have being
Of
dumped
course.
in there. It just doesn't.
And when you work for a big company, I worked for a big company for decades. And when you hear these terms, you're like, no, that's not going well.
Mhm.
Everybody's not dumb. So, when you act like, well, we're trying to right size and smart, no, you're not. You're in trouble. And so I think with Rivian, they do have a lot of backing. And that's one
Mhm.
thing that I think that they have. They also have some popularity behind them. They also make good cars. Slate, I think, has a good chance too, but I do feel like Slate may be more in the business of let's find some investors, let's get our technology into combined with something else, and let's do a ton of fleet sales. Like we know the average. Who makes the? Does Rivian make the Amazon vans?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, see, so if Slate could get something like that, imagine that final mile,
Hmm.
right? That helps when you get a fleet deal like that, and also the Slate has a bit of a Amazon behind the scenes too. So I think that they're probably there to expand their footprint, but maybe not consumers is not the 100% way they're doing it.
Cool. All right. Brian Moody, always a pleasure talking with you. I
Yeah,
appreciate you
thank you.
taking the time. And remember that you can watch us on YouTube. Look for Car-Pinionated. And with that, we will see you next time.